This episode of the Zealous Podcast is sponsored by Perform Better. Perform Better is the leader in functional training by supplying innovative products and top-notch education to trainers, coaches, and therapists. Check out the brand new Perform Better app, designed for professionals who want to stay on top of their game. This free app features education from the world's best. You'll learn from industry leaders including Mike Boyle, Gray Cook, Sue Falzoni, Charlie Weingroff, and many more. Topics range from strength and conditioning, program design, nutrition, business, and marketing. Just go to performbetter.com. Welcome to another episode of the Zealous Podcast. And this week, in this episode, I'm changing gears a little bit. Instead of talking to some people that are athletic trainers or physical therapists within the world of sports, we're going to talk to those that are coming into it, the young recruits, so to speak. They also happen to be podcast hosts of Move Your Brain, Move Your Body. I'm talking about Aleena Canner and Meghan Barrington. They're both certified athletic trainers, and they have been doing a fantastic podcast. So I thought maybe we'll bring them on and talk a little bit about sports, athletic training, and what it's like to go through school to get you to the pros. I hope you enjoy.
First of all, how did you get started with your podcast? What came up with this idea? You two, one of you is in Washington State and the other's in Dallas, Texas right now. It's not like you bumped into each other on the sidewalk. What happened?
Go, Aleena, all you.
Well, Meghan and I met in grad school. Funny story behind that, but we met in grad school, athletic training, and we both kind of had the same view on just injuries and merging it with strength training. And we did a bodybuilding show together in grad school. And then I was living in New York, and after grad school, I moved back, and I was really, really struggling. And we can talk about it. I'm very open about it, but I was a really high level competitive Olympic weightlifter. I had been a gymnast and got into Olympic weightlifting, was about to go to my first nationals, just starting up my career, like a couple years before 2020, had whatever, see where my career was going. And I stopped sleeping, started feeling terrible. All these things happened, and ended up, I had HPA axis dysfunction, which is basically my hormones were like, no, you're done. Take a break. It was too much. Living in the city, working in the city, crazy hours. Then on top of it, a crazy training schedule, an explosive sport, a stressed out human in general. So all that mix of things was really terrible for my nervous system. So I had to quit cold turkey. So when I retired, or thought I was taking a break for 6 months, didn't realize I was actually retiring, I was just kind of going crazy, a little depressed, because my identity was my sport. And I convinced Meghan that I needed to start a podcast with her and that she was going to be my co-host. And she was like, fine, if you do all the work, I'll come for the episodes, because she wanted to do it deep down. And so I put it got it all done, figured it all out. And here we are 2-ish years later. And we have a rolling podcast that it's crazy. Sometimes people reach out to us, and people were listening before Meghan met them in PT school. They already knew who she was. Wild.
Super weird,
Nice.
honestly.
Mhm.
Yeah. So she actually, are you done? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I basically, and this was before I went to PT school. So she, I don't want to say forced me, but definitely she's little, she's 4'11", but she's super convincing. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. It's literally exactly how she explained it. And I complain about it from time to time, because our schedules are just like insanity as far as trying to find coordinating times.
It is hard.
Different time zones, but I am super, super thankful and grateful. And I learned so much from all of our guests. So it's been a really, really cool experience so far. And we have, I think our episode with you is going to be our 64th episode. I'm pretty sure.
Something like that.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
And the networking is amazing too. I don't think there's so many different opportunities that we've both had to talk to people and learn from them, and then connect with them further afterwards and make more friends. And it's just, it's like a little world for us, and we love it. So podcasting is fun.
It was great during 2020 as well.
Yeah.
It's just a way to feel the world outside of what you're allowed to go to,
Really, for me, it's kind of selfish. I'll be the first to
Yeah.
doing this podcast was what kept my sanity through COVID, but also I get to learn so much from the people that come on the show. There's not a single episode where I don't walk away going, wow, okay, I took quite a bit from that. And
Right.
so, and the same thing's going to happen here. But I got to say, Aleena, you and I, we would be like eye to eye because I'm a hobbit, really. You can't tell on the air right now, but I was a gymnast and I kind of played around with Olympic weightlifting, thinking that, okay, maybe I was a wrestler for a little while. And in high school, the track coach thought I would be pretty good at pole vaulting because I was a gymnast. And that was a horrible decision. You couldn't even bend the bar. I was so small. So forget
Oh my God.
but isn't it amazing how you kind of gravitate toward the activities that maybe are dictated by your stature? So
100%.
yeah, surfing, snowboarding, rock climbing, those are things that I progress in quite well. But so with your podcast, Move Your Body, Move Your Brain, just I would love to have this listening audience go over there and find out a little bit more. But obviously it's the title itself says quite a bit, but what do you talk about during your podcast with your guests?
Yeah. So it's actually Move Your Brain, Move Your Body.
Oh, dang
if
it.
we want to be, that's okay.
Okay.
Just so they can find it. It'll probably come up anyway. But
It doesn't really matter. You have the same concept.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing.
Alphabetical.
Yeah, no, that actually makes more sense, to be honest. But we talk, I mean, we have like dietitians on, we have physical therapists on, we have strength coaches on. We had one of my classmates on. We've just kind of like run the gamut with just people that
Random.
move their brain and move their body, or move other people's brains and bodies, to be honest. Because it is all just like, both of us are so big on just integrating, like as a PT and as athletic trainers and strength coaches. I mean, everything that you do and everything that you are affects, your body. And like people are thinking about like how they look and how they feel, but you don't realize like, the energy that you're surrounding yourself with, the food that you're putting into your body, the sleep, the quality of sleep, just your mentality and how you deal with things, how you process things, like all of that affects, like physically it will manifest, So I mean, we just like to learn from everyone, and we wanted like a broad topic so that we could just have as many cool guests as possible. I guess is kind of one reason.
Very cool. Now, when it comes to athletic training, Aleena, for you first, what made you decide on pursuing that path?
Yeah, well, actually, I struggled a lot as a kid. I was very athletic and I succeeded in sports, and as I liked gymnastics, and I really hated school. And I had no confidence in myself until maybe grad school, when I was already studying athletic training. So it was kind of like I knew I wanted to do something that related to human movement and the body, didn't know what. And I thought I wasn't smart enough to be a physical therapist, in all honest truth, which is so sad that the education system can kind of do that to a kid. And it's something that I'm like becoming more and more passionate about as I've gotten older. It's something that I want to, I don't know, help, not necessarily help kids, but help change these systems in society that I think are detrimental. But anyway, so I never thought I could be a PT. So or even an athletic trainer, and I wanted to work as I got older and in college. I was just like, I just want to work with athletes. And I know I find injuries very interesting, fascinating. So I learned about athletic training. I never had an athletic trainer myself, really, because gymnasts, we don't really do normal medical care. We just kind of push straight through. You roll your ankle, keep running. So I did have like a back injury myself, but I never really had any crazy injuries myself up until I was older. And then I ended up applying to University of Arkansas, where I met Meghan. So at that point, when I was in school and had made that decision, I'm going to become an athletic trainer, I wanted to work for USA Gymnastics. And I actually did work gymnastics at University of Arkansas, which when I was there, they were ranked like top 10 in the country. They're a very good team. And working that level, SEC, big, with gymnasts, I felt that they were treated like dollars and not like people. And I honestly it was very frustrating and heartbreaking to see these women that killed themselves their entire lives to work so hard to get a scholarship and then treated not fair. So I also felt that I didn't do as well in a team setting because I couldn't focus on the individual in front of me. So after grad school, also there was some stuff going on with USA Gymnastics, as there has been and is ongoing. So I just could have had the opportunity to apply and work for maybe a college team, and the hours are really rough. And I just didn't really want to do that. It didn't feel right in my heart. So I actually moved to New York, like New York City, lived in Queens and worked at an Equinox gym. And that kind of jump started me into having, right now I have a training business. It's all virtual, but I am seeing people in Fort Worth, and also doing a mix of PRI with my training. So I use the PRI concepts, and then postural restoration for also, of course, just rehab and getting people out of pain. So athletic training kind of brought me back in a really weird, wonky way to what I'm doing, but I am an ATC and I use that, but it's a little different than the typical athletic trainer that works on the sidelines.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds very interesting. You're an aberration in some ways, but a successful one at that. But Meghan, what about yourself?
Yeah, no, she's honestly been super inspiring as far as just her entrepreneurial spirit. But so yeah, so like she said, we met in grad school, and so I'm currently in physical therapy school and in undergrad. So I went to undergrad at the University of Washington in Seattle, and up until like my last quarter, I was pre-physical therapy. And I was doing an internship with the sports medicine, Washington sports medicine. I was working like with their football team and their athletic training staff, and their athletic training staff, actually their head athletic trainer just retired because he got a job with the Mariners, or he didn't retire, he left for the Mariners. But he was just one of those people that just really has an impact on you, and he made me want to be an athletic trainer. So I was actually working at a PT clinic at the same time, athletic training internship. And I was just kind of like, wow, I really like the fact that I don't have to be in a clinic all day. I like that I get to work with athletes. I get to travel. I get all the gear. I got all this, it's like this like kind of undergrad, like, wow, this is really fun. Like I'm going to Las Vegas for free for a bowl game. Like, and obviously there was also really cool, like medical stuff going on as well. And you just, when you're working like with high level sports, the science that they utilize in both their modalities and just like the research that's applied to just how they do things it's very like top notch, like they're doing the new cool things, and it's really, really interesting. So that was why I changed my mind at the last minute, and decided to apply for grad school for athletic training. At that point, you actually could have done a 4-year undergraduate degree or done a master's degree, which is 2.5 years. Now it's all masters. You have to have a master's to be an athletic trainer, which we could get into that, but we'll stay away from there for now. But anyway, so I got into the University of Arkansas and thought that I was going to graduate and go back and work for Washington football, because I knew I wanted to work like college football specifically was what I was kind of interested in, just because I love football. And I think that just the difference between the athletes and just what they're putting their bodies through is just pretty interesting from like a sports medicine standpoint. But anyway, and I was working with Arkansas's football team and kind of just realizing like that the college athletic training lifestyle was not necessarily like what I actually could see myself doing in the long run. Like I think I was kind of only seeing like the good things before, and then not like there's anything wrong with it, but like you're working crazy hours and like you can get paid pretty well. But I just kind of realized like for what I saw myself doing in the future, like the longevity of it just really wasn't there. So I actually decided to go the secondary school route when I got my first job. So I was working for a hospital system, and I was basically like, a lot of hospitals or physical therapy companies will sort of donate out athletic trainers or they will contract with schools to like, high schools in the area, so that you obviously provide like the acute care that athletic trainers provide. But then you're really just like a referral source for them, which from a business standpoint is like genius. But I was really finding that, so I'm also a strength and conditioning coach, and I was finding that my favorite things that I was able to do were, working with people and actually either working with like, especially young female athletes, and like getting them in the weight room and like getting them stronger, but like functionally stronger. That was one of my favorite things. And then just being able to work with athletes that actually got injured and be able to do their rehab with them and get them back on the court. But in that position, I wasn't really able to do that because obviously my job was to give them to someone else who actually gets paid to do that. So, so that's actually kind of what initially sparked me to be like, I think I need to go back to school because I felt with athletic training, it's difficult because you're almost like a cog in a machine, but you're kind of, in a lot of ways, you're just kind of stuck in your one position and you can't reach out into other parts, or at least it's very difficult to do so. And there's people like Mike Stella. I don't know if you've had him on your podcast, but you totally should. He's doing big things for athletic training. But I just kind of realized like, I think all along I was sort of meant to be a physical therapist. I think everything happens for a reason. And I'm super, super thankful. Obviously I wouldn't have met Aleena if I didn't have my background in athletic training, and I'm grateful that I have that because it's been really valuable in not only just like a base of knowledge, but like marketing myself as well, just like diversity wise. So yeah, that's kind of how I wound up where I am currently. I'm currently getting my doctorate at Baylor. Their program is actually hybrid. So I live in Washington. I'm going to school technically at Baylor and I travel to Texas right now every other month for like immersion labs. So like all the hands-on stuff. And then next year I start my clinicals and then I will be a physical therapist by December 2022. So it's kind of crazy.
Wow. That's
amazing.
Baylor's outside San Antonio, right? Is that correct?
No, it's in Waco actually. So it's
Waco,
like
right.
halfway. There's so many schools in Texas. It's halfway between Dallas and Austin.
All right, so you just crash at Aleena's place when you have to come down to Baylor?
Well, on my way down or on my way back, usually I try to do that, at least to see her. But my first clinical site next year is actually in Frisco, which is like a suburb of Dallas. So I'm probably going to just be living closer to there, but I'll definitely be able to see Aleena a lot more because it'll be.
Which is funny because we lived near each other for 3 years, and then for the last like 4-ish years, we were on complete opposite sides of the country. So. Yeah. I saw her once a year. So it's wild now.
It's crazy though. I feel like I talk to you all the time.
Yep, true. I do want to touch on what you said about athletic training though, because I think sometimes people don't realize how difficult, and this is what I struggle with too. Physical therapy, when you go and say, hey, I'm a physical therapist, it pops into someone's mind so quickly what that means. Mm-hmm. Whether it's good PT or not, doesn't really matter. You know that means injuries. When you go up to somebody and say, hey, I'm an athletic trainer, what do most people think? They think you strength train people. Now, if I say I'm a strength coach, that's fine because I am a strength coach. But if I want to tell people, hey, I'm more interested in the rehab aspect and I want to promote myself like, hey, I can help you, I tell them I'm an athletic trainer, they don't get that vibe. So athletic training is a terrible name for the profession and it needs to change, but that's a story for another day. But Meghan was just saying like, athletic training makes her more marketable to people that know what an ATC is. Mm-hmm. But a lot of our time is spent just educating on what it is. And it can be very frustrating. But I also want to give her kudos because it is really hard to go back to school. And I see how much she studies and I think it's going to be really worth it, but definitely a journey. And it's very motivating. So.
That's cool. Yeah, and I agree. When you hear athletic training, some people just think, oh, you tape ankles, right? You give ice packs. That's the extent of it. But there's so much more, and I would agree. So and it's not time for another. That's not for another time. It's time for Aleena to give us the true title of what an athletic trainer really should be. What is it?
Yeah. So a lot of people think that we either or. We tape ankles and that's about it. We run out to the person who's dying on the soccer field. Or they think we literally train people in a gym, which is fine if you're a strength trainer, but I wouldn't trust most of my classmates strength training me. Oh my God. Meghan would agree. No. It would be, they don't do that. Some of them just run and that's fine. That's great. Or nothing. But, well, yeah, that's another problem.
Yeah. So what title should there be?
I think athletic therapist would be a better, or athletic injury therapist, something like that. And it's something that I, because I've toyed with the idea of going back to PT school, and I've also toyed with the idea of changing the name of the profession and advocating it and getting into that. And I say I will, maybe that's the next thing for me. But I think that needs to change. Like this is not an old profession. We have to move it forward.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so there's 94 people in my class. I think maybe 95. There's 94, so almost 100, which is like over twice the size of the majority of physical therapy programs. And I think there might be 5 athletic trainers in my class, and I can tell you that, so athletic training, like one thing that I think that is helpful that a lot of PTs don't necessarily get is like you are good with multitasking, first of all, because you normally have 5,000 things going on, especially if you worked at a high school setting. Actually, college or high school for sure, but like even high school, it's like you have people that don't even know how to communicate asking you for help, and you have their parents and administration and coaches and everyone. But so you're good at multitasking, and also you're good with acute. You're good with the stress. You're good with like, oh shit, like this person could be in like like actual danger, and you
Yeah.
know how to respond to that. Whereas with PT, you don't get that. And not like you necessarily, for the most part, you don't need to, but also you could have someone to have a heart attack in your PT clinic,
Or a
and if you don't know-
seizure.
yeah, and if you don't know how to deal with that, like that could be really bad. So that is one thing I mean, athletic trainers do not get nearly enough credit, especially having been one myself, and Aleena can attest this as the same. Like you work long, a lot of the time thankless hours. And a lot of the time it's like there's the one thing that I did not like, and one reason that I chose to go back to PT school is because a lot of the time, and this is a good thing, you're like sitting there hoping / waiting for something to happen, or hoping that something
Doing
doesn't happen.
nothing.
Doing nothing, right? But but you are so critical in that moment that, you know, an athlete actually gets really injured. You know, like I've had to take a kid to the ER because we were in a really rural area, and like it was just the easiest thing to do. And that's definitely really, really valuable, and like I'm grateful for that those experiences that I had for sure. But that was just one thing that I didn't like. I like with PT, it's like people are coming to you because they have a problem, and you are the solver of that problem. Obviously, one-on-one, a team with the athlete or with the client, but with athletic training, a lot of time, you know, you're just watching sports, which there's nothing wrong with that, but like you're, you know, waiting for something to happen, and hopefully your team is healthy and it's not happening. But that was one thing that I really didn't like, and one reason why I wanted to go back to school. But yeah, athletic training, hopefully, you know, people like Mike Stella and even Aleena, like, I mean, you're doing pretty cool things yourself, will help kind of grow the profession. And also they're, like I said, they're a cog in a machine, and a very, very important cog, that, you know, in collaboration with orthopedic surgeons, physical therapists, psychologists, nutritionists, dietitians, like everyone, like they're such a great and important point person that knows
Can be, for
a
sure.
lot, can be for sure, that knows a little about a lot of things and a lot about some things, you know. But it's difficult to be really good at something if you're kind of a dabbler in everything.
So I've got to ask too. For the listening audience, I've kind of mentioned a little bit. My daughter was on the high school football team, and she was thinking about going onto the college football team that she's going to this fall. She's going to university up outside of Portland, Oregon. But she's going up there for kinesiology in the hopes of being certified as an athletic trainer like yourselves. So from a fatherly standpoint, as well as just from a curiosity standpoint, do you notice there's a gender gap or gender barrier difference?
You know, that's a funny question, because our class, so we had 15 in our class, and Megan, there was more girls, 8 girls, 7 boys.
Yeah, it was one less, I know that much.
And you know what was very funny? I think females are less in the profession. This was the whole thing. Females were less in the profession, but because there was less men in our class, they got like scholarships for being, oh my gosh, I'm so mad about it.
I will say, you mean it in regards to like getting the job that she wants?
Yeah, or just you know
Oh.
how athletes relate to a female athletic trainer compared to a male athletic trainer.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, like, you know, the stereotype of like females being caretakers, that could be, I want to say, you know, beneficial. Like an athlete feels comfortable coming to you for help. But I would say, I mean, especially if she plays football, she sounds like a pretty confident individual, as far as like not really worrying about like gender bias. I mean,
some barriers she could
to be
break.
completely honest with you, I think that teams, especially in 2021, are like, shit, we need to get a female. I hope it's okay that I swear, by the way.
Whatever you want to do.
We need to get a female athletic trainer so like we don't look like we're sexist, you know? So
As they should.
I
'Cause
think,
athletic
I mean,
training-
it's funny because women are like, oh my God, we're so oppressed, which I mean, there's definitely gender gaps, but like, I'm like, let's capitalize on the fact that everyone's like, hey, we need to look for girls. Like, okay, well then I want to be the best option, girl or boy, you know, or male or female, whatever. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's, I think it's about the person, you know, and even if there are biases that people have, you know, stereotypes that they might put out, like at the end of the day, at least in my opinion, the people that you care about their opinion are the people that are going to take you for you. So as long as she's being herself and just like owning the fact and knows her stuff, like I think that she will stand out in any profession or any job that she wants to get.
With what you're saying too, Meghan actually worked football, and so they didn't really let that many female students work football. They did a select few, and they didn't really have any female head athletic trainers working football. I think in 5 years from now, it'll be even more for sure. There'll be more diversity with that. But I will say for other sports, like for me, I want to work gymnastics. I think for a sport like gymnastics, nothing against men, but gymnasts have been so kind of have had a lot of trauma, a lot of gymnasts surrounding the Larry Nassar stuff. And just in general, I've seen athletic trainers that I think women do relate better, but at the same time, it really depends on the human and the person. So, I mean, it's sport dependent, it's each athlete dependent, and then it's whoever that person is. If you're a shitty athletic trainer, again, sorry for cursing, but if you're shitty and you just, you know, just care about the human in front of you. That was one of the biggest criticisms I had about different clinical sites was like, care. Like my best clinical site, she cared, she was awesome, she taught me, and it's just kind of like, I don't know. They just have to care about the people in front of them. But that's my little rant.
No, that's good. I like ranting. I like swearing too. So you keep on.
Okay.
Perfect.
So, Meghan, you we're working with college athletes, but you're preferring the high school athlete. Why?
Honestly, it wasn't that I preferred one or the other. It was that, like Aleena said, a lot of time in college sports, like they're like, it's like they're an employee, but they're not. Like they're not getting paid. They get a scholarship a lot of the time, but they're almost sometimes treated as if they are just like
dollar signs,
especially in like the SEC. Anyway, I mean, like, it's not always like that by any means, but the reason that I wanted to work at high school rather than college was purely because I didn't want to be traveling all over the country with insane hours. And I thought that high school was going to be better. And it was a little bit better as far as the schedule goes, but also you're working with not one or two sports, but like 15 sports at once. And so, yeah, that was the reason I chose. It wasn't necessarily the different age at all. I actually, although I do really like working with high schoolers because I feel like they're so, like, high school was when I got interested in strength training and like wellness and health. So I think when you're working with college athletes, and again, like not like I have any problems with it at all, but like they're kind of like there for their sport and that's their thing. And that's like, they know they're going for it and then they have school. Whereas with high school, it's like, hey, they're in high school. They're kind of like just doing a sport because it's what you do in high school. And you happen to be their athletic trainer or their strength coach or whatever. And you also are really impressionable, or they are impressionable people, and you can really influence like their kind of their outcome as an adult, like in a positive way. Like, I mean, and again, like being another female, I had not one, but like multiple parents that wanted to have meetings with me regarding like their daughter because they didn't think that she was eating enough. And like, obviously that's like beyond my scope of practice as an athletic trainer, but it was cool to know that like they trust you, like trying to help their kid, you know, and like trying to find the right resources, you know, the dietitian or whoever is able to help them. So yeah, that was the biggest reason that I decided to go high school versus college, was just the scheduling point. But I think you're really cool to work with both ages, honestly.
Well, what about going in the opposite direction and moving up beyond college to the pros or Olympics? Is that something
Yeah.
that you're inspired to do?
Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like I've never done it. I've never done it, so it's hard for me to tell. Like, it's not like I have experience in it. I actually like, as far as like physical therapy goes, so my first internship is actually at Exos, which is the location in Frisco, which they will work with a lot of high school, college, professional athletes, which I think will be really, really a cool experience. But as a PT, like I would love to work with just people that, whether you're actually doing sports or whether you just want to become more competent in your human body, like that's kind of the people that I see myself working with. High level athletes are really cool to work with, but also like you can't do anything too much or you'll screw them up, and it's cool to be able to get them back to their sport for sure, 100%. But like, I don't know. That's a great question because I feel like I could, but I also really love working with people that just want to learn how to move and how to take care of themselves, because that's most people.
Aleena, what about you though? You mentioned USA Gymnastics, but you're with Posture Restoration Institute or PRI. What about blending all your gained knowledge, including PRI, and hitting the pros or the Olympics or USA Gymnast, or even outside of the US and going to other Olympic teams?
So I actually am currently working with one Olympian that has been an Olympian and is now, I don't know if I don't know, she's an Olympic gymnast, and she's competing this weekend actually in a very big meet. And I've been working with her for a while, implementing PRI just for recovery reasons, just to help her. And then I'm here working with Casey Ratliff, and she's a PT and she's a PRC, so she does PRI primarily, and her facility is a PRI facility. And we worked with a track Olympian, gold medalist, which was wild. And then she's teaching me, so she's really primarily working with them, a lot of football players, a lot of Major League Baseball, NFL and MLB. And eventually I like working with everybody. My whole thing is like I still evaluate and assess the same. Like we've had like some really high level football players. I don't know that much. I know football, I understand it, but one time I asked one of the guys like what school he went to. Meanwhile, he like won 4 championships with Alabama. Like everybody knew that. So to me, it's like I think I get more excited over like a weightlifter or a gymnast just because they're my sports and I understand them. And then, but I'm cool with working with everybody. I think working with certain athletes, it's very fascinating, just because I only use the PRI model and at this point, and then I strength train on the side, but it's crazy the results you see, and you see them quickly, and you still see the same patterns in the athletes despite their sports. But some of them, their patterns are either they're really driven and they're coming in with pain, or they're coming in with pain and like something happened within the last few years, but like they move really, really well. They take cues really well. So it's just, I like it, but I don't want to specialize in like one type of sport. I really like seeing everybody and just being able to do what I love, which is what I'm doing. So, and just getting better at it.
It's interesting the juxtaposition between the high level caliber professional or Olympic athlete and working with them and general population, or even like a high school student, because that population of high school student or general population, their primary focus is their life, studying, being a student, and doing all that, or a career person, and that's where it is, compared to the high level athletes that is their career. So every movement they do is dictated by that whole kind of thought around that this is my job, this is my career. So everything I do in terms of movement and in improving myself, this is what I dedicate 24/7 to. And so the compliance level is so much higher, it seems, with those level athletes compared to working with the other group where compliance is not necessarily even high up on the list. So how is it, and both of you, I'd love to hear from both of you, like how do you how do you adjust that? Like it's so easy to work with athletes, as far as I'm concerned, like the high level athletes, because they're going to do exactly what you tell them. And,
Mhm.
and they drank the Kool-Aid long ago. It's not a problem. But the other ones are actually more demanding, I feel personally. But what about you?
No, I agree 100%. Like, I don't know. In my opinion, and again, it's like, it's not like I'm practicing as a PT yet or anything like that, but I think if you like really connect with the person and not just like their injury or like, because and this is kind of the problem with like our current model of like, okay, I went to see the surgeon, they said I don't need surgery yet, quite yet, or like I need surgery but next week instead of this week or whatever. So let's do PT first, and here I am, my insurance is paying for it, so fix me, you know. So if you have people like actually invested in it, first of all, but also just like figuring out what they want to do and then connecting it to movement, because I guarantee you, especially if they have a quote unquote orthopedic injury, movement will help and moving better. And you know, and a lot of people, and I mean, again, I speak for a lot of women. A lot of women want to look better, or a lot of women, you know, have problems with their bodies after pregnancy, and movement and understanding your body as a human. I think everyone, and again, I don't want to like force this on people, but I plan on like sneakily doing it in a way that's beneficial for the client. Like, if you have a body, you should care about how it works, in my opinion. And like, I think just your quality of life will improve if you do so. And I understand there's barriers to that. You know, it's like you might not have a supportive home life. You might not have the financial means or the environment to go outside and like go for a walk, like we were talking about earlier. But I just think that, and again, that's like a whole nother layer of the problem solving aspect of being a physical therapist or a movement specialist or a coach or anyone that's working with, you know, general pop people that aren't just like, get me back to my sport, you know, I'll do whatever, is just being able to connect it to what is important to them and then finding a way to weave it in so that it is relevant to their life, you know, so that they can see like how it is relevant, you know, because I mean, I haven't met a single client, like I've had female clients that want to work with me so that they can look better, and I teach them how to deadlift and they're like, wow, I feel so strong, this is amazing, or like, oh my gosh, I was gardening yesterday and my back didn't hurt, like what's up with that, you know. It's like, I don't know, it's cool just being able to like, you know, be a team with that person and figure out like, hey, I'm going to help you get to what you want to do, not what I want you to do, except for you're doing what I want you to do because it's going to help you. And I just know that it will. That's kind of how I feel about it, at least.
That's cool. Alina.
I'm going to talk about more rehab side of it. Like, I think just because with strength and conditioning, like people just sometimes want to work out. And so they're compliant if they have a scheduled session, right? Because that's a compliant. But for rehab stuff, like giving them homework, well, first off, I don't give more than like two, maybe three things at most. And then I think why people will stick to it or will do the stuff I ask them to is I show them the difference in their body, like a before and an after. I make it very obvious. And I mean, I've learned how to do that. I have a mentor who showed me like steps of how do you make this obvious to somebody? And then in person, I can really show them, hey, your body is better with this exercise or using this or whatever you need, whatever, if you need an orthotic, whatever it could be, integration. And then the other thing is if I can't figure it out, I will find somebody to figure it out for them. I will send them. I just sent one of my clients to a specialized eye doctor in New York City because she knows PRI as well. And this client has had trauma to the left eye and also head injuries. So I think people will stick to what I say because I make it so obvious that they're like, oh, it's a no-brainer. I need to do this two things a day. And then they also feel better. It's such a dramatic shift for them that they feel better. So that's what I think.
That's huge. Okay, another topic, ice therapy.
I'm not a fan.
You're not a fan.
I'm not a fan. I have not been a fan. And also, I just had an exam on this because apparently most of my classmates are not aware that it does pretty much nothing. However,
I'm not surprised.
However, it can temporarily slow nerve conduction and make you not feel your pain. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You're literally like,
yeah, the way I say it,
you don't feel as much pain.
Like when you, let's just say you burn your hand on the stove, what's the first thing that you're going to do? You're eventually you're pull it away, but it took a while for the pain, the nociceptors to get up to the brain. So how do you bombard the receptor sites? Well, you shake your hand, you suck on your thumb, you put it under water, all those things to take up space from those receptor areas in the brain. So what is cryotherapy and ice therapy? I'm so happy to hear that you're not fans either, because people keep coming up to me, and of course they've got research to back this and that, but I tell people, hey, where does grandma want to go to when she retires? Does she want to go to Anchorage, Alaska, or does she want to go to like Tallahassee or Palm Desert? Where's her joints going to feel? Where's your body going to feel better? So why not? When's there going to be warmth therapy? Tell me about that.
Yeah.
In our modalities class, remember, stimulate the A beta fibers.
Yeah, well, actually, so total sidebar, but this is something that I learned recently and I did not know. So I will just tell you for this little knowledge bomb. Anyway, so apparently with chronic pain, so you have your A delta fibers, which are like the fast pain fibers. That's like the sharp pain that you feel immediately. And then you have C fibers, which are like slower, kind of like more chronic. That's like more, if you have like chronic pain, that's typically what it is. And then you have the A alpha and A beta fibers, which the A beta, I believe
A beta overrides any of the pain.
Yes, exactly. But with chronic pain, and I actually don't have a reference for this, but something that was in one of my recent lectures was with chronic pain, there's actually been shown that the A beta fibers, they actually like reroute and go like almost like they go the C fiber route. So it's like your brain learns to feel more. So like you'll have hypersensitivity, right? So something that should normally be like soft touch will actually feel like super painful. So I don't know if that's like the basis of like fibromyalgia.
Interesting.
But it's really interesting. Like your brain learns pain. Your brain produces pain. The reason we have any pain is from your brain, obviously. But it's like interpretation of like, oh shit, we need to change something, or oh hey, this is not good at a good position, or hey, that's hot. You know, it's like it's just your brain protecting you from death, essentially. You know, so
I will say something about ice. So I was talking about my hormone stuff and whatnot. I swear I was born with severe eczema as a kid. So maybe my mom said like 2 months old it started. And usually that doesn't happen. Kids aren't born with that. It somehow happens because of issues with the gut, eczema, skin, anything on your skin is related to your gut. We just did a really good episode on it, actually. So for your listeners, if they want to go, they can listen to that. But I will say ice baths when you have really bad eczema breakout is great. That is the only thing I really use it for. You can use ice post-surgery when there's like a crazy amount of swelling. I think, okay, or like right after somebody tears their ACL, just to like get them to feel a little more comfortable, fine. But I mean, people that are icing every single day, I'm just not a fan. Cryo, I don't know.
Pain.
Yeah,
cryo, like the cryo, like super cold, I think is kind of different. I don't really know how that works, so I can't attest to that. Actually, Steve Lintern would be a really great guest for you to have on. He's more familiar with that, but yeah, with ice, like
he's great.
Pain relief and I mean, acute swelling, I guess, maybe if it's like within 10 minutes, but honestly, like you don't want to stop that anyway, because it's part of the inflammatory process. And with chronic swelling, like you definitely need to figure something else out because you're obviously doing something wrong, you know? So actually one of my mentors, he was like a dinosaur athletic trainer at Arkansas. He was with the basketball team, Dave England. He was there forever.
Oh.
And he said he used to actually, this was like probably in like the 90s or the 80s or something, he would actually, if a guy sprained his ankle at a night game and they had another game the next day, he would literally they would stay in the training room that night and he would ice them like every hour just so that they wouldn't go into that like swelling response. And apparently it worked. Right. I don't know.
That's interesting.
I wonder I think also the movement, like, cause you don't really, some people swell right away, but other people, you know, you go to sleep and then you wake up in the morning with a golf ball on your ankle. So, yeah, I don't know, but I mean, it's like kind of that just, you know, you learn by doing and it worked for him, but he would never do it unless like a guy wanted to play the next day and then deal with the sprained ankle after the second game. So there's that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It seems like there's been kind of a rebirth between Wim Hof and some others that it's just all about getting into the cold. What about other trends, or I won't use the word fad, but something that is potentially here, but maybe temporary in the world of like athletic training or
SMR.
Bosu balls.
What's
SMR.
I hate Bosu balls.
Bosu balls. All right.
I don't feel like that's really a trend anymore. I mean, they have been the PT clinic. I have uses for them. I
mean,
but
sure.
the whole concept that it's like gonna be better for your squat is stupid. But
yes, that's what I mean.
I would say like SMR, like self myofascial release, like with a foam roller. People are doing it like before they work out on all the muscles that they're about to try to use, and you're literally like slapping that muscle in the face and telling it to relax, which is not ideal for like using it. Same thing with stretching. Like obviously, I hope we all know by now, like static stretching is not like ideal.
Oh, that's a great
like
one.
pre activity. It's actually it's probably bad. Yeah. Or ever. What's interesting too is like, okay, so I don't really believe that static stretching is really going to be that beneficial. Like I believe working muscles through full range of motion, strength training and full range of motion is like, that's probably just as good because you're owning the movement and you're strengthening it throughout the full range of motion. That makes more sense to me. But for someone who wants to like literally, and it's different like post contracture or like post, maybe post-operative when you have like some excessive tightness, maybe. But even then, like in my classes that I just had, they were like, there's no evidence that it changes the length of the muscle, but apparently being in a lengthened position for a long period of time, like I'm thinking like if your posture is a certain position, you will actually add sarcomeres and you will actually lose sarcomeres if you're chronically in a shortened position. But with stretching, you're not going to do that. And you're also not going to do that if you do 3 sets of 30 seconds and then you see like transient changes and then you go back to doing whatever the hell you were doing before to get yourself in that first position for the rest of your day. Like, how do you possibly expect to make permanent changes with stretching? Like, you have to like add on top of it, like, okay, if you have transient changes, which you totally can, you then train in that motion. You strengthen in that motion, right? I mean, think about it. Like as a gymnast, you have strength.
I know, but I'm still so patho from being stretched. So as a gymnast, you definitely can make long-term changes. I had no sense of my hamstrings, and you can make these changes, but the repercussions, because the bones and the muscles are not in a proper position, and you are still a more one-sided human being, and then you're stretching on top of it. I don't know. I'm so not a fan unless it's your sport where it's necessary. But I just see it before like somebody's about to do Olympic weightlifting and I'm like, you need your muscles to go, fire. Yeah. Why are you stretching a split? Like it's mind blowing to me, and it's very old school mentality. And I think it's cranking on muscles that are, people keep stretching and stretching and stretching. And the reason is because their brain does not have sense to that area. And that area is screaming for a little bit of sensation. And so they keep stretching it. I have a client that I've been working with for like 3-4 years, and she doesn't get it. I mean, it's just like an old school thing. She's still stretching, still loves her yoga. And I'm like, you're never going to feel better.
Yeah, it's just a temporary pain inhibition, right? Just like ice therapy, really. I mean, I think they're the same.
Yeah, just driving you down a path of being pathological.
Yeah, you move better, then everything's going to feel better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So dynamically moving tissue, loading it and unloading it.
And reciprocating.
Behave and bringing stimuli to it. That's a completely different story. Mm-hmm. So we can lengthen tissue. I don't even like the word stretch because it has a connotation that, I would love to lengthen tissue and teach it how to support itself or bring load to it, as well as do it in an unloaded way so it can experience both. Because there's going to be times through movement where that leg is swinging through and it needs to lengthen and it's not being loaded necessarily. Mm-hmm. So yeah, very interesting. Okay, SMR and stretching. Good. All right. Well, we hope those go the way of the dinosaurs pretty soon too. Although I will say with SMR, if you're really trying to hit certain muscles by waking them up and slapping them in the face, it may be that it's the other muscles that potentially could use it, right? So there's if I'm leaning off to one side, the muscles that are supporting me are the ones that are under length and load, and they're constantly going to be bombarded. But meanwhile, the ones on the opposite side are passively shortening because they're not being asked to load. So what if I were to roll and hit the ones that are passively shortened to slap them in the face and wake them up, and at the same time create some circulation and some length in there by just like rolling them back and forth. Now there may be some SMR might be helpful in that. I do know that with some clients, like let's just say they're in some type of split squat or some type of lunge and the back knee is starting to get cranky. They're not able to extend through that hip and therefore there's a lot of tension going on down at that knee. I might get them just to crank a little bit of sport stick or foam roll or massage gun on that hip flex or on that quad and then go back into that pattern. Did that alleviate it? And more often than not, they'll be like, oh yeah, now I can access the movement. Great. Okay,
Yeah.
so no, we don't want to do that every time, but let's see if we can't access that movement without that firing up again.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's to turn it off, not to turn it on and prepare it to move, which is why I think like, I don't know, it's just, yeah. But the transient changes, like there's so much utility in the transient stuff in manual therapy and even SMR and even ice, honestly. Like there is use for everything, but it's not like the band-aid for everything. You know, it's not like the actual solution. The actual solution is again assessing why do they need this? Like what is actually going on like within the person and how they move.
That's a
Getting
great,
to the root cause of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because you have quite a few tools in your toolbox and not everything needs a hammer.
Mm-mm.
Right.
Mm-mm.
So speaking of tools in your toolbox, Aleena, just give us an overview of PRI for the listening audience.
Oh my gosh. Do you have 3 more hours?
Can you give me the elevator speech?
Yeah, sure. So I think PRI is practiced in many different ways depending on how you learned it. Although I think it's supposed to be done more like in one way. I think it's just interpreted many different ways. But it's an extremely integrative approach using sensation of your body and breathing and the rib cage, but thinking about the asymmetries of the body. It always goes back to the asymmetries. So you have a diaphragm on your right that is bigger than the one on your left. That is just your like anatomy. And then on top of it, you have a liver also on the right. You don't have that on the left. You have a heart on the left that keeps your chest wall more open on the left. You have more compression on the right because we're lateralized more to the right. You have brain on the left side controls right side of your body and opposite vice versa, but the brain on your left hemisphere has more neuroanatomy motor points on the right side of your body. So in this world, we are all righties. We are right dominant. Even if you're a lefty, you still have this neuroanatomy that makes you more right dominant. Lefties are just a little more complicated. You have I think it's 2 optic nerves that come to your right eye and 1 to your left. This is all just anatomy. All of us have less left peripheral vision. Our teeth occlude differently. Our palates are like different on both sides. I don't know enough about that yet because I haven't taken any of those courses, but yeah. So ultimately we're more right dominant. We lateralize to the right and our body may compensate on the left for some things. And sometimes we overuse the right side of our body. So an injury on the left piriformis pain is very different to me than right piriformis pain, just because I understand what's going on in the pattern. So there's a pattern, then there's one primary pattern, and then there's like overlaying patterns on top. And so it's like everybody has skin, and then some people have tattoos. So everyone is one pattern, and then some people have a little extra. And when you test people out, they're all asymmetrical humans unless their organs are flipped at birth. And that's very rare. So we all compensate differently, and finding the reason for someone's shoulder pain on this dude compared to this dude, there are going to be maybe different reasons. But PRI does it in a very integrative approach. So when done properly and optimally, you have the physical therapist or therapist, whoever is working with the client, who also has a dentist on team and also has a optometrist on the team. And also we have a lot of us send people, they use the podiatrist for orthotics. And I think that's just one guy who does that right now. I don't know if there's obviously a lot of people in the country making orthotics, but the type we use. And yeah, so using very integrative approach, looking at all these different systems, your visual system, your sensory system of your occlusion, and then just neurology in general, using these senses, what is on your feet, what shoes are you wearing? You can influence how people feel in their body, where their pain is, what they are sensing. So I hope that kind of sums it up a little bit. Not everybody has an entire integrative approach. That's a reason I moved down here, just to understand that whole aspect and learn and be part of it. So that would be the ultimate, doing PRI like that. And it can influence, we just had a summit or like a seminar course a few weeks ago on the basal ganglia, which basal ganglia diseases is like Parkinson's. And we talked a lot about how these asymmetries can kind of contribute to that. But while the dopamine in the brain, so Parkinson's happens when the dopamine becomes more symmetrical. You need your dopamine in your brain to be asymmetrical. So that, I just thought that was interesting because I don't know, just kind of goes along with it. But yeah, so
about Parkinson's then, just for a moment, there is an eerie correlation, a very high incident rate between those people living with Parkinson's and lower leg injuries, a history of low leg injury.
that's interesting too.
Yeah.
I think actually they might have mentioned that.
Put that into the PRI filter to
I'll tell them.
Yeah.
I'll tell them.
I want you to get back in touch with me and see, because
I'll find out.
the acupuncture world, there's an acupuncturist here in Santa Cruz, and she does this approach called Tui Na. She wrote a book, and it really explored that there was a very high correlation. 90% of her patients that had Parkinson's had a history of some type of severe lower leg injury in the past. And
That's
all
really
the people that I have worked with Parkinson's here, I've just curiously just asked them, not that I understand the correlation at this point, but they all have had some.
I'll look in my book here.
Yeah. It'd be very
That'd be interesting.
and that's the kind of stuff that I love. Is like things that make
Yeah.
you just go, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
That is just so amazing. So, and you,
Wow.
every time you're learning something new with PRI, I'm sure that's happening. That you're just going, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible!" Of course, we're
All
not
the time.
we're not perfectly symmetrical. How could we be? And we're not trying to get anybody into this perfect place of symmetry. That would be a falsehood. That's
No,
like
yeah.
the Holy Grail, right? But can we
Yeah.
get them to go in that direction to some degree
Mhm.
so that they're not so dominant here or there, or just change their patterns and see what happens, right?
Exactly.
That's
And
all.
it's pretty crazy. You can change someone's pattern like this pretty instantly because it's neurology. And also, so Ron was actually, our founder was in dental school and he dropped out and became a physical therapist, but he dropped out because he was like so fascinated with the asymmetries of the body and of the mouth and the teeth. And we do a lot with teeth. And another thing that he's studying vocal cords right now. He has a gait class, a forward locomotor class, which actually this weekend, I was going to take it, but it's like kind of too late, I think, for me to do it right now. I just have a lot of stuff going on this weekend, but anyway, and he's also, so he's studying voice box, and then he studies a lot with hearing as well. So with the basal ganglia stuff, a lot of what we talked about was like rhythm in the body, music, hearing, being able for them to, they're able to like move, but they can't start and stop. That's Parkinson's problem. So once you get them moving, it's just, it was very, very fascinating. But yeah, so that is a little bit in depth about PRI. So it's like I'm always I'm mind blown every single day. Every time I take a course, I take it multiple times. So it's been cool.
Yeah, because I can never absorb everything the first time around either. But okay, how about we'll just geek out for a second? You're talking about teeth. Are you familiar with teeth meridians? Have you
No,
ever?
I don't.
Okay.
No.
Your Google search, look up tooth meridians, because
Okay.
every tooth, just like you've got spinal nerves that exit the spine and they go and innervate different areas, the teeth relate to different areas of the body, just
I'm
like
sure.
acupuncture, the top of the ear is toward the top of the body. The lower you go, the lower into the intestines. And
Yeah.
right. And foot reflexology is kind of the same way. The tips of the toes are more head, eyes, sinuses, and the lower you go on the foot, same thing. Okay, from a structural standpoint, how about
I know what you're about to say. I have an idea.
okay, 26 bones in the foot, 26 vertebrae in the
I knew
spine.
you were going to say that. I knew you were
All right.
going to say that because there's a lot of stuff about we talk about the heels, and the molars are the heels of your mouth.
There
And
you
this
go.
is like this is a floor, and then you have the floor under your feet. And so, yeah, and I saw a picture today. Actually, they had that in one of the books, and it's showing the teeth and the feet. It's very fascinating.
Very cool. So
I knew it.
in human motion, the calcaneus matches the movement of the skull. When the skull is trying to stay balanced and locked on the horizon, the jaw opposes the skull, just like the ribs oppose the pelvis. So the jaw and the ribs actually match one another in movement in all three planes, whereas the heel, the pelvis, and the skull all match each other in all three planes of motion, no matter which heel we're
Fascinating.
talking about. And then you start looking at like the bone structure, the foot, if it's placed upright with the plantar surface facing you, biggest bone on the bottom, smallest ones on the top, just like the spine. So the 26 bones could very well relate to the 26 vertebrae, including sacrum and coccyx, of course.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I love this stuff.
Oh my gosh, you start geeking out. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Megan, that would be a great thing to just throw into a physical therapy class every now and then.
Oh my gosh. I actually, you know what's funny is like I was in cadaver lab and obviously we're like have a real body in front of us. And my professor even said, he was like, we were talking about the diaphragm and he was like, yeah, look at how thick that right side is. Do you see how strong that is? Like, look at that right side. And I was like, does that affect anything else? And he was like, I don't think so. And I was like, really? You don't think so? Okay. All right. Well, that's enough of that then. I don't know. I honestly just
doesn't know.
It's like, I haven't taken PRI. I mean, I understand the concepts behind some of the concepts behind PRI. Like I understand, and I've felt in myself and I've seen in other people, like, obviously, you know, but it's too much. It would just, I don't know. Eventually it will be taught in school, I'm sure, but it'll be a long time. But there's, I don't know. It is interesting because we will admit that there is a massive muscle that they admit is a part of the core and how we pressurize our abdomen, and that it's different from one side to the other. Like if you had one quad that was bigger than the other, you would think that would affect things, right? I don't know.
You do have one quad that's bigger than the other.
Yes, but if it was obvious to the naked eye.
I know, I'm kidding.
Yeah. So
anything, right? You look at it, you're just like, the rib cage is not symmetrical. This side is protruding out further than the other side, right?
Left.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fascinating. I wish we were symmetrical. It'd be a lot easier, but
oh my gosh.
I think we need the asymmetry. I think we need it for movement and reciprocation. But I think
right? It's the Goldilocks place that we're looking to achieve. Not too much to the left, not too much to the right. Not too tall, not too short, not too hot, not too cold. But can we just kind of orbit around that kind of place that there is that Goldilocks? We don't have to live there. It's nice to go off in the neighborhood and find out what hot and cold is and everything. But can we restore and come back into that place where at least it's some modicum of balance, right?
Like returning to center, you know?
Hey, how about that? Oh, wait. This is it, actually. This is I think we're ended on a good note there. And
so awesome.
Let's talk about people want to listen to your podcast of Move Your Brain, Move Your Body. Nailed it.
Woo! Good job.
I'm sure they can find it on Spotify and iTunes and everywhere else, right?
Everywhere.
Yep.
You have a website?
Yep. We don't have a website. We each have our own websites, but we don't have a podcast website. But maybe we'll do that.
Yeah.
You could find us on Instagram. We have an Instagram, and it's at Move Your BB.
Yeah, and then individually, I'm at Megsi, MEGSI 072, and Aleena is
just my name, Aleena Canner.
Super easy.
Perfect. It's all in the descriptions below the podcast. So make sure you check that out, give a click, and listen to their podcast. You two, I've had a great afternoon with you two.
Me too.
So much fun. Honestly.
It's awesome.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Rocky.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap for another episode of the Zealous Podcast. I just want to thank Megan and Aleena for coming on and sharing. And, you know, if you want to hear a little bit about the other way around, a flip side, you can tune in to Move Your Brain, Move Your Body when they interview me. But in the meantime, please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. And if you haven't been following on Instagram, if you could, just give us a little bit of a following there, Rocky_Snyder. And we'll see you next week.